Sabrina Jackson. Isn't she beautiful? I was 14 and a perfect size 4. And I weighed in at 120. You see, I was what the Commodores coined a brick house. She's mighty, mighty, just letting it all hang out. 36, 24, 36. You see, I was cute, confident, and curvy. And I liked it. Until one night. It was dusk. I was walking home from the Northwest Activity Center, because, you know, back then I had to be in before the street lights came on. Y'all remember that. And there were 3 older guys from my neighborhood who I would see around walking behind me. And they were catcalling, you know. Hey, Sabrina with that big old ass. Girl, you got that Coca-Cola bottle shape. And the way they said it made me feel anxious. It made me feel fearful. So I began to walk a little faster. And so did they. And when I got a block before my house, they ran up on me, grabbed me, pulled me into the alley, and gang raped me. And as they were taking their turn, doing what they wanted to do to me, I didn't scream, I didn't holler, I just wanted it to be over. And when they were done, they were running down the alley, high-fiving each other, laughing like they had accomplished a coup. Well, I put myself back together and I ran home and I went in the side door, and my father and my 2 brothers were in the kitchen like they always are. And I just said, hey. I did not say a word about what had just happened to me. I ran upstairs to take a shower, and I grabbed the soap, and I began to scrub, because I wanted to get rid of the smell and the feeling of dirt and feeling nasty. And as I was taking this shower, I started to think back to one night when I was at the tender age of 8. You see, at 8, I loved to stay up late. And this particular night, I had asked my grandpa, while my grandmother was sleeping and my 2 brothers were sleeping, could I stay up to watch The Tonight Show? Because, see, I got excited when I heard the music to The Tonight Show. I loved when I heard Ed McMahon say, "Here's Johnny." And my grandfather got up from his lazy boy chair, which he sat in all day long, and he disappeared into the back of the house where the kitchen was, and he came back with an ice cream cone. And as he held the ice cream cone, I'm sure my eyes got big as saucers, because I love ice cream. And he says, "Breen, if you want this ice cream, you're gonna have to sit on my lap." And I quickly jumped to sit on his lap, because that's my grandpa. And he had ice cream. And when I was finished with that ice cream, I ran upstairs and jumped into the bed, because I could not wait to the next day because we spent the night at my grandparents' house whenever my parents would go out and hang out, and I was waiting till the next day so my mother could pick us up and I could tell her what had happened to me. So when she picked us up and we got home, and when we got by ourselves, I said, "Ma, Grandpa touched me. He unbuttoned my pajama top and he pinched my nipples, and it really hurt because he had long fingernails. And he began to make this noise and this sound as he rubbed on his wee-wee. And then I jumped up because I felt something wet and white on me. And my mother grabbed me by my shoulders and looked me eye to eye and said, "You cannot say a word. You can't say a word because if your father finds out what your grandfather did, he'll kill him. And you don't want to be responsible for that." So I finished my shower, and I got dressed, and I ran downstairs, and I did my homework, and never said a word. Because you see, by the age of 14, I was already conditioned not to tell. And so as I continued to hang out in the neighborhood and see these three guys, because I would see them all the time, I would say, "Hey, how you doing?" Like nothing had happened. And the two guys were brothers, and they were really bad guys. I mean, they would get in trouble all the time. They would beat up people. They were bullies. And later, I found out that both of them were murdered. And I remember feeling bad because I didn't want anybody to be hurt. And then the third guy wound up being my parents' lawn guy. So I would see him all the time and be, "Hey, how you doing?" And he wound up having kidney problems, and he died. And I felt sad about that too. Because now, as all of this is going on, I learned to stuff my feelings with food. So I started eating and eating and eating. But see, stuffing my feelings wasn't new. Because see, I did not like the skin that I was in. I didn't like being dark-skinned. Because when I was little, dark skin was not in. And people would call me darky, midnight black, and all these other derogatory names. Oh, until one day in the 9th grade at Cass Tech. See, I saw a guy who was a senior and a football player, and his name was Stan. Can I say Stan was the man? But I really never thought Stan would say anything to me. One, because I was a 9th grader, but more importantly, because I was dark-skinned. Until one day I'm standing in the hallway and I see Stan coming, and I'm like, "Oh," and I'm looking down, and he stops in front of me, and he was tall and thick, like I like him now, but he looked at me and he said, "Hey, dark and lovely." that became my mantra. I mean, I had dark and lovely going down the side of my jeans. I had t-shirts. Oh, I began to embrace my dark skin. But I kept eating. So by the time I went to Eastern Michigan University for undergraduate, I had went from a size 7 to a size 16. And I had blown up to 200 pounds. And then by the time that I married my first husband, he was my husband. I weighed 280 pounds. Didn't stay married to him long. By the time I married my second husband, who is now my second husband, I had ballooned all the way to 310 pounds. Still eating and eating and eating. Because see, I had gotten to the point that I did not like the feeling of men looking at me with that "I want you" look that Marvin Gaye talks about. I didn't like it. So I would stuff myself, and I kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And so when I was married to my second husband, we had a very active and satisfying sex life. But I did not feel sexy. And so one night, I mustered up the courage to say to him, "You know what, honey? I don't feel sexy." And he began to laugh, which hurt my feelings because I'm really opening up how I felt, that I did not feel sexy. Because see, in my mind, being sexy was what I looked like at 14. But also, what I had got screwed up in my thinking is that if I looked like that and someone thought I was sexy, then they would take it. I didn't want anybody to take it. But I did want to be wanted by my husband, because that's who I chose to give it to. But when he laughed, I said, "What's so funny?" He said, "Honey, if you weren't sexy, why am I always trying to have sex with you?" And I did not at that moment equate him wanting to have sex with me being sexy. So I had to begin to work on that and heal my thinking around that. So I ballooned all the way up to 340 pounds. In 2015, I was given the opportunity to do a local TV show, Fox 2 Let It Rip. And on that particular night when I did Let It Rip, my friends who love me were taking pictures and putting it on Facebook. So I get off of stage and I go and look at Facebook and I see these pictures of this woman who looks like she had on a fat suit. And I was mortified. I'm like, who is this woman? So I made my decision right then. I am going to change the skin and the shape of my body. Because the one thing that I learned from being a perfect size 4 all the way up to a size 28 is that I still had men looking at me with that "I want you" look that Marvin Gaye talks about. So it didn't matter what size I was. I still had men who wanted to be with me. But I choose who is with me. So I started doing some research about weight loss surgery. And I researched the sleeve. And I had almost decided that I was going to do it, but I was still sitting on the fence until I ran into a friend of mine who was a playwright, and he was meeting with me because he wanted me to be in a play. And I stopped him before he said anything and says, "Oh my God, you've lost so much weight. What'd you do?" He said, "I had the sleeve." I said, "Oh my God, that's what I'm thinking about having." And he says, "Sabrina, do it. Do it for you. Do it for your health. Do it because it's a decision that's gonna benefit you." And I pulled the trigger. And I had the surgery. So from that day to this day, I've lost 110 pounds. And so I have become comfortable with the skin that I'm in. I have become comfortable with all these curves. So much so that I tell men now, "You can't handle all this chocolate. I'll put you in a diabetic coma."
Dr. Sabrina Jackson, a diabetic coma.